I'm actually being dead serious. And one might think, like, dead serious? In this ridiculous outfit? Yet we aspire to a reason that includes, or we worship, a God whose dominion includes every rape, every murder, every butchery, every sad song, every sweet song, every salt, every kiss, every punch, every act of charity, every act of vengeance. All within the purview of the contemplation of reason. All within the purview of the influence of God. Before I get to Bishop Curry, which inspired, to a degree, which moved me along, motivated me to pick up the discussion where I left off with a little bit more than I had when I left. Before I get to that, this. Ooh.
Yes.
I apologize for the theatrics. Oh, I missed it. I like Bobcat Goldthwait in this movie, but I promised to get to Bishop Curry. Good Pope Macarios.
You're Carl Heffler?
I am Heffler.
Jesus.
Do you know where Bernice Rodenbar?
No.
Well, she broke into this man's apartment and stabbed him.
Did?
We'd like to talk to you about that. But first, we'd like you to go brush your teeth. Here it is, right here.
Really?
Thank you.
Thanks. Charlie Weaver, Lollycock's calling. That. Apparently there's something a little bit more mysterious about the secret squares than we're ever led to believe. And I'm asking you, cop, dude, guy, I want some answers from you now. Proud to open your bank and oh, beautiful. I'm bugged. I'm being bugged. This is like, I come in.
Don't touch that. You signed a release form for that earlier, Mr. Heffler.
So? That's bullshit. You're driving me nuts. Don't even look at me. You're such a condescending fuck. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I hope you noticed, like, when I said that, I was kind of smirking a little. Are you okay? I worry about you.
I'm fine, Mr. Heffler, thank you.
Did you know that, like, policemen are at the highest rate of suicide? So, you know, you think I'm fucked up. You better be careful yourself someday. Boom! find a big dead old fat cop. Go explain that to your kids, why don't you? You know why I'm here? It's got nothing to do with any of this. The reason I'm here is because I'm a black man in a white man's world, and I'm just caught in the cogs of
You're
your...
Caucasian, Mr. Heffler.
Beautiful! Throw that in my face, too! And I look like shit. Fuck. Hey, Moose.
How's it going?
Not so good.
I can see people in there. It looks like a people aquarium.
Let him go as soon as possible.
Hello!
Pretty funny. Now I'll turn it back to the beginning. It's like trying to pump gas. Keep pressing the trigger till it works. Yeah, I watched, I was going to make a comment on a video. The video I was watching, I couldn't make comments on, so I was going to try to find one till I could make a comment, but then I thought, don't hurt other people with my silly nonsense. But like, yeah, Bishop Curry, Pope. Good Pope Curry, Pope Macarius, Pope Good Nicholas. Of course, he's an Episcopal, but what happens? Luther's important. There will come a day when Luther is canonized, when everything comes back. I can't believe I'm saying this. This is totally antithetical to like anything I would have ever said, stood for, whatever. A piece of me gets it. You know? It's kind of like how a lot of people harsh on the Jesuits, and I certainly would have. Up until about like somewhere between 5 days and 5 weeks ago. But like even, right, like Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther. His first trip to Rome was during the time period when Raphael was painting his first papal apartment room, one of the 4 rooms. Plus, to my mind, in his disputation, there's a painting of Luther before Luther was Luther, but anyway. St. Ignatius of Loyola and Martin Luther were coming up to prominence at the same time. So the thing which empowered the fleeing from the church and the thing which empowered the power of the Pope both came at the same time. And what's super interesting about Ignatius of Loyola and the Jesuits, they're like what the Marines are to the president is kind of like what Ignatius of Loyola was to the Pope. Like, we got your back, man. However, so that upheld the church, right, in the hierarchy of the church. But what it upheld was the political power of the church. What it upheld on a personal, spiritual, soul level was what Martin Luther was doing. In so much as, like, Ignatius of Loyola, who created the Jesuits, has this doctrine, this study, these meditations to come upon a deep personal connection with God. I haven't gone through that. I only recently learned, that consistently he talks about the way through it, and also that he talks about, very importantly, that providence that there's no mediation between providence. Providence exists between God and the soul, the person, the individual, the ego, for that matter. Which is, in a sense, Lutheran, if, depending on how we define the word providence. Providence, in its most stripped down definition, is providing. You're provided for, and nothing stands between that. What do we need provisions for? We need physical provisions, spiritual, this, that, whatever, on and on and on. So never mind grace, never mind, blessings, whatever. The subsistence of providence. No mediation required. Not to say it can't help or hurt, but like these folk in the Jesuits were to swear allegiance to the Pope. They were the Pope's personal folk, upholding that hierarchy. At the same time, dissolving it by the preeminent, imminent, direct transmission of providence. Doesn't make sense, but it does. Because the political structure needed to be upheld long enough for the story to get to the individuals. And it has. And that's why, in some sense, Martin Luther was a COINTELPRO of Ignatius of Loyola. At the same time, weird. Seemingly paradoxical, but not. For that matter, Martin Luther, as the hero rebelling against the church, would have had no power, none, without the church. They could have got him anytime they wanted him, and they didn't. They could have stood in the way of the distribution network at any point along the way, and they didn't. Because his mission was an important mission. And it's already come back to the church. His arguments have already come back there, yet he has not. He will, but it won't stop there. It's not the Hobbesian Leviathan that will go back to the church, but an army of Hobbesian Leviathans. When the epicycles return to the circle, the Episcopalians return to the church. Pope Curry, good Pope Curry, with Agnes, the church waits. And with you, I walk with. Though I'm not worthy of anyone I've ever spoken. I'm not worthy to walk in your shadow. Never mind God. But if no one else will, I will. And of course many do. Many do, and I just talk. So that comes back to the priesthood and the symbol. The very, very prominent, simple symbol of the black dress and the white stripe. Never mind the Jesuits, who in conspiracy circles are called black popes, and all of that, and the whole Saturn thing, which isn't unimportant and isn't, like the Christopher Lord, True Theory stuff, awesome. In a lot of ways, it conflicts with other things that I'm really into, but like the connections are great. It so happens I have over time come to a different conclusion than the one explicitly presented. Why white? Well, that's the light and the darkness. If it weren't for that one little piece of white, it would be all black. That one little piece of white sets the whole thing off. The entire body. Where is it? It's the light and the darkness, so it's the light. It's the photon. But it's over the voice box. It requires space and time. Waves and air pressure, space and time, and matter. A whisper in the darkness, a small piece of white over the voice box. A light in the darkness. The entire choir behind the priest, the minister, the pastor, the preacher, is encapsulated right there. The choir, the chorus.
That's right, 5667, that's what it says, and these machines don't lie.
Right there. Why? Because of the harmonies and the melodies, the chords, the scales, the way those sounds are arranged, just like the way the light is arranged, just like the way there is an arrangement between certain tones of colored light in certain tones of the voice. The subtlest way we can touch in the material world that we know of, or that everyone is familiar with, is the voice. Never mind a look. How that changes what comes from the voice. So the look is actually more efficient. I don't need to say anything to just go like this, or like this, or like this. The meaning is clear because it comes through the light. But those are stills. And this can affect you. Now, if I were big and brutish, this could affect you. If I were small and more humble, this could affect you, right? But when it comes to being affected, the best way is when we're spoken to with passion, with enthusiasm, with meaning, with truth. Most everybody who has parents can remember one time, 2 times, 3 times, a dozen times our parents spoke to us, and we remember, good or bad. Probably a lot of times kind of bad. Discipline. Or maybe not even just discipline, maybe anger, rightly or wrongly placed, but we remember because of the power of the voice. And Bishop Curry got voice. And I'm not just saying that. Because for instance, people talk about how you're not supposed to say about black people that they are well spoken. True. I mean, it's a wrong thing. It's not culturally popular. It's a bad thing to say. However, over the last couple years, I've listened to a lot of preacher talk, a lot of philosophy, just a lot of people talk on my phone. A lot. thousands and thousands and thousands of people who take things deeply and seriously.
New York business for the most part, but there isn't.
And he had, I'm not saying he's the best, the smartest. I'm not saying he's right about it. But what I'm saying is he is a voice that resonates with essentially everyone.
This one I would have trouble with. It's very specific.
And he knows his shit.
This one, there's no problem.
And he knows truth, and he knows storytelling. He knows rhetoric, but he's not a rhetorician.
The usual that. Always a pleasure.
He's a witness,
Ernie, I know you like to
And
find
rhetoric
different things.
is a tool in his tool bag, except it's not even that, because it's
Long-time customer.
obviously just intrinsic to who he is, not what he does. He's got the power of the word, of voice. Bring that dude back to the church. And I'm not just even being poetic about it.
It's a dentist.
You want to save the world? You want to be the most pragmatic, practical, and scientific. Science forgets the power of the story, of the mythos, of the religion. Lately, I've been listening to the audiobook. I mean, I've talked about Pascal before. Pascal Ponce. This was my first introduction. A different translation than both the Audible or LibriVox versions of the audiobook. A different translation. In this preface, it describes how there are different orderings and translations and so on, because they're fragments assembled by editors, essentially, posthumously. And in this book, it does talk about, Pascal says, the last thing one decides when writing a book is what to put first. And it's very interesting, the difference between what's put first in this book versus the LibriVox and the Audible audiobook versions, which put first the discussion and the distinction between the mathematical and the intuitive mind, which is essentially a better defined, I don't want to say dichotomy or dialect, but something like that, between the logos and the mythos. In this book, it essentially sets Muhammad against Jesus. And it's also interesting that the way he spells Muhammad, which is Mahomet. When I say he, I mean the way the translator translated however Pascal wrote it in French. I'm assuming he wrote these notes in French. I know he learned Latin later on, but which also reminds me of how the Quran has been spelled over my lifetime. Quran, Kuiran, Quran, and Q''Uran, and Q''Ran. These are the way I've seen the Quran spelled in popular literature. Also interesting that 20 years ago, I met this dude who I was kind of friends with for a little while. He had the same name as me. And he made his living gambling. His dad was a math professor, and he was pretty good at math, and he'd been a Marine. And this was before 9/11 and before we went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he told me that when he went in the Marines, he said, we're going to war with Iraq and we're going to war with Korea. It's not a matter of if, but when. That's what they told him in the Marines. That was just one of the many things that spewed out of his mouth when I was hanging out with him. There was a lot of other interesting things too. But, he came upon hard times, but he was the real deal. He had some shit. And, it's interesting that Quran and Korean Also, the Q apostrophe URAN and the QU apostrophe ARN also corresponds to QUI RANUS or OURANUS or URANUS. Or, as Danny McBride illustrates, Your Highness, Your Highness, Uranus, 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 Quirinus, Korean. It's just interesting. Kind of like, I didn't get to it last time, but it's kind of interesting that World War II, we fought two nations with flags. The Nazi flag was a big red rectangle with a big white circle and a swastika. The Japanese flag, who was the other folk we fought, was a big white circle with a big red dot. So you have a red rectangle with a white dot, and you have a white triangle with a red dot. The difference? The swastika in the middle of the Nazi flag. Where did the swastika come from? The East, where Japan is. Kind of interesting. And by kind of, I mean, what the fuck? So in this book, 1. Order. 1. The Psalms sung throughout the world. Period. Who bears witness to Muhammad? ? Himself. Period. Jesus wants his witness to be nothing. Period. The quality of witnesses is such that they must exist always, everywhere and wretched. Period. Capital He is alone. Period. That's different than the distinction between the intuitive and the mathematical mind, which also Pascal sets that one could be intuitive or mathematical, could be both, which is his hope, or a dull mind, which could be neither. That's a different division than that between, in this case, Jesus and Muhammad. And I'm not trashing on Muslims or Islam by saying that. That's not my intent. I can only respond to what I receive. And this book hit me very deeply when I was young. And but the distinction he makes.
Hey, Christopher, it's Frankie. I'm going to be hanging at the Mayday after about 9. I'd really like to see you. So come, okay? Bye, baby.
Yeah, let's just say it's different in that book. The way it starts out, it's different.
Definite refrigerator man here. It's very, very nice. Now, what's in the closet for you? Let's go and look.
It will be a huge power
It's very nice.
when the absolute wretched
But he's such a good dresser.
hurt people who can't seem to fix themselves understand why.
No, this was there.
Like, that's where I want to reach. I want to reach people who are completely broken, know they're never ever going to be okay. There's a reason.
This is not going to do. I would not watch dogs barking this. But this I would watch dogs.
I relate to that. I am like you in that sense. But we have a greater purpose, and I've seen it. We will come together, even us, the completely broken. We will come together, and we will change the world. Who else? The very well put together, or not so, but the vegan Christians. The reasonably well put together vegan Christians and the completely broken peoples of the world, engaging in such self-harm as myself, alcohol, just consumption, all of it. There's a common cause, there's a common purpose, and bringing all those points together to one place. See, that's the importance of Ignatius of Loyola in the political sense, not just in the spiritual, personal, individual to God providence sense. That political structure needed to be upheld. They say might makes right, and the Catholic Church is criticized, as well it should be. But behind the scenes, that power needed to be upheld, and it wasn't might makes right. It was that the right assumed the attributes of the dominant might for the sake of the right to come beyond the brutality of the power of the might, because it had to temporally to fulfill an eternal obligation. That obstinacy and brutality, and worse, existed elsewhere, all over. And I emphasize and worse. Which also comes into America and the likes of George Washington, who I'm saying, he was a spy master. He was the first American spy master, the first president, general. He was the whole bag. Not philosophical, pragmatic, practical. Wanted to be a farmer. His biography is like the most depressing, awful story I've ever heard. I hate it. I hate hearing about George Washington. I feel so bad for him. But also, he wasn't just a slaveholder. He was part of the Underground Railroad. He was part of a mission way bigger. He wore the Masonic garb with all the Egyptian stuff on it. His entire haircut and presence is meant to mimic the Sphinx. You can see elsewhere where I've talked about that, but you'll see it's true. The Sphinx haircut, the George Washington haircut. Those are the only two images of that type of hair that stick together like glue in the minds of contemporary human beings. And the Washington Monument is an obelisk. Everything about Washington points to Egypt. In a sense, he's like the Amun. If there's a moon and Moses, there's Washington and Lincoln, so far as white folk are concerned. White folk. Who don't not matter if they were fighting for the wrong cause, or for the right cause.
You look like a wind-up toy. I mean, you gotta be crazy. You gotta be really crazy to stab somebody like that. This was very bizarre. I mean, this was very strange. I don't understand. get out of jail, don't do anything wrong, and now all of a sudden you start doing jobs again.
Carl.
Do you ever think that I might worry about you? Do you ever think, like, maybe I don't have oodles and oodles of friends, and if I lose you, well, I'll be losing, like, my best friend.
Carl, you don't understand. You don't know what's going on. Let me tell you what's happening. You know, Ray to get me caught. He comes in and he says, I got something that I think you'd be interested in. He had a pair of gloves from San Mateo Jungle 5 years ago. You know why I know they're yours? I say no. He says because inside,
The political structure had to be upheld so that the story could be upheld and disseminated however it was disseminated. And that's why, I can't believe I'm saying it. But in a sense, true or false, whatever the case may be, the story, the person of JC, man, I hate calling him Jesus. I hate that. I don't know what his name was. And I met those with that claim. There's no reason, whatever. But
I don't know, maybe you could go, like, $25,000 pyramid.
the specialness of that story is its efficacy, proven through time.
I think maybe a better idea is saying you find yourself a new best friend.
But he's supported by that entire prehistory that the Magi, with their authority, came to essentially enunciate, or to I don't know what the right word is, but like, they came to let, you know, because you got this little girl and this old man, these broken people, sleeping in a fucking poo-poo barn, a manger, mangy, a manger, anger. Some tough shit. That's where it all happened. In the tough shit. That's why the broken people got a reason to come together. Because you know about the tough shit.
Well, my darling, let's talk. Is that right? You just hold it
They
right
had to
there.
come to let those poor, broken folk know, hey, you think something's going on? We just came from nowhere. Yeah, shit's going on.
Bernie, listen to me.
Then in all those missing years when they raised him and they teached him, he needed them. And he was upheld, taught, lifted by them, saved by them also, the Magi, the men from the East.
Listen to me, goddammit.
But they needed him to send Thomas back, and others,
As I recall, that was a woman's prison.
to fix what went wrong before. There's that whole thing I was talking about Daniel Quinn earlier in the books. There's the book Ishmael, the book My Ishmael,
I'm sorry. I told you.
Story of B. There's some others. I think he actually wrote a book on Providence. I can't remember, but there were others. And but the whole deal with Ishmael was like, it's this gorilla who puts an ad in the paper. Must have a strong desire, you know, seeking student must have a strong desire to save the world, something like that. And it's this whole like Socratic dialogue between an ape in a room and a dude in Ishmael, and then with a young girl in My Ishmael, Saint Agnes. But anyway, the whole one of the things I think in that book, and I've heard it elsewhere, is like, you try to reach millions, but focus on trying to reach one, because the one you reach might be the one that reaches millions. That's what the Magi were doing way back then. They were trying to reach someone who could reach the world. I know I'm using the wrong name, but Jesus did it. No matter how you slice it, you can't unslice it. And he's different. He's different from Buddha. He's different. I mean, don't get me wrong, but he's different. Because he is the... Well, first of all, he came to save the Jewish people, which means chosen. So you think chosen of the world, or the Hebrews, or the Assyrians, or the Ethiopians, right? So there's all that around there. But there's all kinds of things that doesn't touch, and there's all kinds of chosen. So when you think of like Jewish, you're thinking of the tribes, the specific tribes, right? So he came to save them, but his message spread and became the strong arm of the West, the fire, Heraclitus, the fire. So it's important, and it needs to be understood. But most people who are into it, and I don't care what your sect, how much you know, how much you've read, how much you don't. The big thing that unites, I mean, not just these people, because there's other, religions, other things, and so on. But the deep care, and that is the same in like any religion, especially on the surface level. We're always trying to get to the truth and dig away all the layers and all the boundaries. But like we don't really need to.
What are you saying, Christopher? Caught him in the act.
Because we all care.
They did.
Closet doors broken.
We all care.
The alarm system was tampered with.
That's the key.
I didn't know that.
That's like that's the secret password. Like I care. That's it. I care. You care. I care. Doesn't matter how fucked up we are. But what's special about now, and the revelations, the truth, the apocalypse, the revealing, things are coming out now. It's the simplest thing in the world. Every Bible humping dude on the planet, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but even in a bad way, can agree. I mean, it's like the first thing out of people's mouths, right? It's the thing that everybody who's against all that shit hates. I'm both those people. Jesus died for my sins. God makes me sick. You hear it? Jesus died for my sins. Thank you, Jesus, right? But why? So you'd stop sacrificing animals. Now this is going to sound anti-Semitic. I'm also saying that Moses did the same thing. The symbology is a little different. I'm also saying that Jacob and Esau is the way that we're supposed to reinterpret Cain and Abel. Stop sacrificing animals to God. A Christmas roast, a Christmas rabbit, a Christmas turkey, a Thanksgiving turkey, an Easter ham. All of these are sacrifices, religious, ritualistic sacrifices. And the whole point that Jesus came to die for our sins in the Christian Milieu is so that we would no longer sacrifice animals, which is any butchering, any killing, any eating, period. It's so obvious, so plain. People are, the code, the Bible code, the Da Vinci code, the this, that, whatever. But that's like the most face value, simple, plain. You don't need to read between the lines. In fact, you can skip a lot of lines and get that one. Almost all of them. It's the one omnipresent truth of the faith as it exists. If all points don't reach toward that point, the whole fucking world is over. Really. Because of quantum entanglement. Because of reciprocity. Because of Socrates like begets like. Because of karma. Because of whatever. The asteroid or the volcano or whatever came because of the dinosaurs came because the dinosaurs couldn't say, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But the solution was found in eternity and set in motion long before it happened. That rock, that thunder, that magma, which wiped it all out. In favor of a bunch of little shrews, more peaceful, less voracious, smaller, more efficient, more compassionate, which has given rise to us, at our best, compassionate, loving, forlorn at the wickedness, at the butchery of the world, even sad, hopeless, and beyond hopeless to the fourth black, which in this world we should never reach to. But we have the opportunity through moral, spiritual, Holy Ghost, theurgical, magic, to change the entire cosmos forever. Why does the Earth have that 23 degrees tilt? Where is the center of the cosmos? What force do our collective moral decisions exert on types of material? They say spiritual isn't physical. That's not true. Spiritual is physical. It's part of the rarefied physicality. Or rather, it has components. It has direction. It has a force. Can't see dark matter, can't see dark energy, can't see tachyons, can't see neutrinos, and can't comprehend negative temperatures. But they exist. And they have an order. And when we think of different, we already know different particles can be connected through space and time and have superluminal, instantaneous change when paired, if we pair particles. We also know the same thing, at least so far as we know, can be in the same place at two times. Or in two places at one time. But anyway, the quantum entanglement of particles, they say, oh, we can do it in a lab and we can construct this and that, but all particles are always paired, quadrupled, quintupled. There's always this nexus of particles, subatomic, superatomic particles. There's always this nexus. And when we pair one to another, we're just repairing it. We're unpairing it from where it was. May have an effect, may not, considering that there are trillions. Countless numbers of subatomic particles, rationally, geometrically, multidimensionally harmonized over all of space-time. So we can try to figure it out in all these different ways, but we know in our hearts that collective moral force. People shit on like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X because they're iconic, because they weren't perfect, because they had internal contradictions. Right? But as icons, they really do represent something fundamentally important. They couldn't either have done what both did individually without each other, both as symbols and as individuals. What they did mattered deeply. Yeah, you can make criticisms as far as like they weren't so far above us that we can't relate to them. They're broken like we are. They were broken like we are, and they did the fucking good fight anyway in their own separate ways. And yet, at a bigger level, it worked together. And it did. Yeah, it's not done. A lot of shit ain't done, and it goes way back. And it don't have nothing to do with skin color. Because there were bad black dudes and bad and good black dudes. And there were bad white dudes and there were good white dudes. There were good and bad Christians, good and bad Muslim, good and bad Buddhists, good and bad Shintoists. Maybe a few more good ones. We need to make anybody who has anything to do with Christianity needs to create the opposite of St. Patrick. We're driving all the rats back to the church. All the rationals. Because it's rational to be intuitive and to feel just absolutely disgusted by life and how wrong everything is. That's rational because it's disastrous and murderous and terrible. Yet, here we are safe with the opportunity to create safety elsewhere. And not just here and now, but through the spiritual realms, all the way up. To answer God's question of God, to be the collective omega of God's alpha. That's why we're here, and that's why we are here now. I was born for this, but not just I was born for this, like you were. I was born for this. It takes a lot to say that, man. I thought about it earlier today. Like, am I gonna say that? Am I gonna say that? You fool. You old man. I trip over my own feet. I destroy myself in every imaginable way. Yes, I'm gonna say that. Because if I wasn't born for this, I wasn't born. I don't exist without this. This is my breath. It will be accomplished in the material world. We're going to inform the feedback loop in a way that has not been done for a long time. We're going to kill ideas. That is an enormous claim, and it's going to happen. If it were not to, we won't want to be here if we don't do this. Kind of a little prayer to myself. I know I had to get a little hot there, but it was necessary today. Hopefully the silliness appropriately tempered the heat and the hubris. Thanks for the laughs. And
Sir, I'm Gemini. I had my keys to my BMW over here earlier. Let's cut this shit. Would you like a nickel?
thanks for the care.
I fucking knew it the minute you walked in.
And I hope you're having a good day.
Where you see that guy over
And
there?
if you're having a bad day,
He just had a homicide.
hold on to the same spark. That spark you're holding on to now, keep holding. That virtuous bonfires are coming. I hope I get to see it.